The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark. Glory to you, O Christ. When Jesus, Peter, James, and John came to the other disciples, they saw a great crowd around them and some scribes arguing with them. When the crowd saw him, they were immediately overcome with awe, and they ran forward to greet him. Jesus asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" Someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought you my son. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak, and whenever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. And I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they could not do so." Jesus answered them, "You faithless generation, how much longer must I be among you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to Jesus. When the spirit saw him, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. It has often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you are able to do anything, have pity on us and help us." Jesus said to him, "If you are able, all things can be done for the one who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out, "I believe, help my unbelief." When Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You spirit that keeps this boy from speaking and hearing, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." After crying out and convulsing him terribly, the spirit came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he was able to stand. When he had entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" Jesus said to them, "This kind can come out only through prayer." They went on from there and passed through Galilee. He did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, "The human one is to be betrayed into human hands, and they will kill him. And 3 days after being killed, he will rise again." But they did not understand what he was saying and were afraid to ask him. The Gospel of Jesus Christ. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. I recently watched a movie about a certain woman who seemed to have the perfect life, the perfect house, the perfect wardrobe, tons of perfect friends. Every day was the best day ever. That is until one day when she was hosting a perfectly organized pool party and dancing in the perfectly choreographed routine. Our main character asks out of seemingly nowhere, "Do you guys ever think about dying?" And with a literal record scratch, the scene stops. Now, by now, perhaps some of you have figured out that I'm talking about Greta Gerwig's 2023 Barbie film. And yes, I'm a little late to that particular party, but I was watching the movie last week, and I was struck with how strangely reminiscent it is of this night. Not just with the overwhelming pink coalescing with today's Valentine's Day holiday, but with the timely message of the film. When Barbie is confronted with the idea of her mortality, the perfect facade of Barbie land that surrounds her suddenly melted away. She began to recognize her own imperfections and saw the cracks in the seemingly perfect world around her. Soon, in an effort to restore order, she embarks on a journey to the real world, our world, only to be confronted by the world as it actually is. She finds a world plagued by systemic and personal evils like entrenched patriarchy, rampant consumerist culture, and broken relationships. When she returns to Barbie land, Barbie discovers that the brokenness of the real world has even infiltrated that perfect make-believe place. Okay, in many ways, this was a fun and silly movie, the perfect summer comedy to counterbalance that other serious drama that was released on that same day. But sometimes movies allow us to see parts of ourselves, parts of our world that we would otherwise overlook, and Barbie is no exception. Movies can confront us with truths about ourselves that we would otherwise choose to ignore, not unlike Ash Wednesday, which this year seems to be its own little cultural counterbalance to Valentine's Day. It's a strange thing we do each year, gather on this night to begin the holy season of Lent. We gather to confront again our own brokenness, even marking ourselves with ash, a stark reminder of our own mortality. While the world around us continues on or even gathers to celebrate romance on this night, we come to this place to ask ourselves, do you guys ever think about dying? It's a strange thing, perhaps even a morbid thing to do each year, to be reminded that we are dust, and to dust we will return. But we dare to find the good news in the dust. To remember that even as God crafted us from the rich, dark soil of the earth, we too one day will die, bound to return to the same beloved earth God created in the beginning. And in the meantime, we have this precious gift, this one life, to explore what it means to be human. Barbie isn't the only character in the movie to undergo a journey of self-discovery. Ken, of Barbie and Ken, also has his own existential crisis, though his path is admittedly more cringeworthy. But even so, he struggles to learn who he is apart from all the things that he thought made him him. There's a relatable yearning as he sings, "I want to know what it's like to love, to be the real thing." For some reason, Ash Wednesday has become one of the most popular days in the church year, a time when even here in Seattle, you may see people walking down the streets with black smudges on their foreheads. I've often wondered why that is. In a culture focused so much on making ourselves look good on social media or preserving our life, or elongating our lifespan with diet and exercise, or even tuning out the pains of this world by tuning in to mindless television, what's so compelling about talking about sin and death? One of my mentors, the Reverend Dr. Craig Mueller, has made me wonder if it's exactly the telling of these truths that brings a sort of devotion for this strange night. He writes, "Ash Wednesday is the most honest, the most human day in our liturgical calendar. We are mortal. We are finite. We will die and grief will hurt. It's the price of love. It's the sting of being human. It's what makes life precious. On Ash Wednesday, we pause, we stop, we remember. Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And we let the season of Lent do its work on us." We come here tonight to remember what it is to be human, to confess what it means to be imperfect and broken creatures, to look at the parts of our lives, of our world that have fallen short, and ask for God's help in creating something new, something different. We come here because we want to know what it's like to love. We want to remember that to love is to be human, because that's exactly how God made us, in perfect love. Today we confess that we are human, that we are broken, that we are fallible. But because we are human and because God is who God is, we are also capable of love, of healing, of being remade and remaking. This day, this season of Lent can often turn us inward, cataloging our own faults, our own failings. We will beat ourselves up. We fast almost as a self-imposed punishment for what we've done wrong. But the prophet Isaiah reminds us that the fast God desires is not to look miserable, to lie in sackcloths and ashes. Rather, our God desires a different kind of fast, to let the facades of this world fall away and to see where we are called to be, how God is hoping we will love. Is this not the fast I choose? God calls through the prophet, to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them and not to hide yourself from your own kin? That's what this night is about recognizing our humanness, our individual brokenness, the brokenness that has infiltrated this real world, and instead turning ourselves to God, to journey again into the love, into the healing, the remaking that God is working within us and among us, striving to let that love flow through our lives and through this world like an ever-flowing fountain, daring to trust that the God who created us in love has not abandoned us, but is still coaxing us to embrace the life that has been prepared for us all, to see the power, the potency of that love in this world, trusting that the Holy One will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places and make your bones strong, and you will be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in. Back in Barbie land, Barbie used her new understanding of self to overcome the brokenness she saw and restored that community to what it once was. But even then, she knew that she could not be finished. Her eyes had been opened, and she had been called to make a difference. Ultimately, Barbie finds her freedom in becoming human, and quite literally so. It's not without its risks, as the fictionalized portrayal of Ruth Handler, Barbie's creator, pointedly reminds her. You understand, human beings only have one ending, she said. Being a human can be pretty uncomfortable. Humans make things up like patriarchy and Barbie just to deal with how uncomfortable it is. And then you die. But it's a risk that Barbie is willing to take. I want to be part of the people that makes meaning, she says. Through their own unique journeys from existential crisis to self-discovery, Barbie and Ken have something to teach us this Ash Wednesday. We are called to be a people who make meaning, which means that we have to first confess that we are people, to confess that we are human. We are not immortal plastic dolls living in a perfect world. We are human, mortal beings living our one life, a people created in love and a people called to share love. In that confession, we find freedom. Being human is something that we continually discover we are, in all the messiness and all the feelings, in all the dust and ashes. In that confession, we find mission. Being human means that we are being called to love. It means no longer living for ourselves, but living for one another and for the sake of the real and hurting world. Dust to dust, ashes to ashes, love to love. This is indeed what we were made for.